I come from Jerusalem. I make your job very easy. From a city that thrives on stereotypes, labels, and classifications, where one's faith becomes one's nationality. This is, of course, in addition to the ground occupation, the Israeli occupation of the city. As a child, I come from a Christian family. They moved from the Christian quarter to the Muslim quarter. That was a blessing, and it started my liberation. They defied the status quo. But it meant that I lived out of place in the very beginning. Muslims did not like the fact that the Christian family moved in. Christians said, why the family moved out? The Jews don't like anyone. So, as a child, I always believed in perfection. And in my art, I started to build myself my own world, a new world that's only true to me. But there was a price. This effectively led me to live in alienation. But having said that, is it possible that one source of my alienation was decided when I was born and named Steve Sabella? Wherever I go, people ask me, hi, I say, I'm Steve Sabella. Oh, but what's your real name? I say, Steve. No. What did your parents name you? I say, Steve. No. What did you change it to? I say, Steve. They just don't get it. I don't have a problem with my name. I like my name. It sounds good, Steve Sabella. However, it's people who only understand life through these labels. And my journey has been to deconstruct these labels, defy them, and break free. But something went wrong in my identity formation. Identity implies sameness. And I always felt different as a child. I refused what has been forced upon me, and I desired to construct my own identity, which is only true to myself. So, and this has nothing to do with my political consciousness, as you know later where I'm standing. I come from Jerusalem, and for me, Jerusalem is one, and I'm not adopting the Israeli terminology of Jerusalem. This means East and West equals one Jerusalem. So when I was 19, I went to study in Israeli school. I didn't speak Hebrew back then, so I went to a summer course, and I learned the language in 4 weeks. When I introduced myself, I said, hi, I'm Steve. I didn't say, hi, Steve, I'm Palestinian. Why would you do that? I mean, I live in my own city. Hi, I'm Steve. But the Israelis, I was the first Arab in the school, in the history of the school, assumed I come from Europe. Why? My Hebrew was, had a bit French accent, and I was suddenly European in my school. What this means that they were sharing with me their attitudes and their thoughts about Palestinians. They will be honest about what they really feel, and I learned a lot. One of the stories was about my good friend, Amir. Amir, we were together 3 years in the school, and once we went to the Dead Sea. He's driving, he had a nice red car. And then while driving, there is a man trying to stop. I say, why don't you stop for this man? He said, I will not stop for him, with an attitude. I said, why? He said, because he's an Arab. I said, how do you know he's an Arab? He's driving 100 kilometers an hour. And he said, because I can smell an Arab from 3 kilometers away. 3 years I sit next to him, 30 centimeters away. He never smelled I was an Arab. It has to do because I was wearing good perfume, anti-Arab perfume. This is what I call the Dead Sea syndrome. Not only that, in Jerusalem, I take a taxi to go to my house in the old city of Jerusalem. Yeah? So once we reach the gate, Lion's Gate, the Israeli taxi driver says, wow, how do you live here? I said, what do you mean, how do you live here? It's like, you as a Jew, in the Muslim quarter. I said, I'm not Jewish. I said, what do you mean you're not Jewish? I said, what are you? I said, listen, I'm Palestinian. He said, no, it can't be true. I said, what do you mean? He said, you don't look Palestinian. So I asked him immediately, what does a Palestinian look like? It's really a question. Because even so, I say I come from Jerusalem, I come from Palestine, but you don't look Palestinian. Ask people, what does a Palestinian look like? I found the answer. It's something like that. It can only be that. That will be the only convincing way to convince someone I come from Palestine. In 2007, I left Jerusalem to go live in London. And I was in a postgraduate house with Israelis in it, Palestinians, Arabs, from all over the world. The Israeli friends always refer to me as Palestinian light. What beautiful, no? Actually, they didn't see it this way. This is what they saw. somehow they saw me less Palestinian than other Palestinians. Why? Is it because I'm pragmatic? Is it because I'm this and that? I don't know. But because I'm that, they think I'm not Palestinian. I must be something else. So I can only be Palestinian light. 1995 to 1997, I meet the muse of my life. You know, I didn't marry a Palestinian. I could not. An Israeli, it's very hard. I would have if I found the right one, Palestinian or Israeli, but it didn't happen. I wanted something neutral. And Jerusalem, you have to go neutral. And what do you marry? A Swiss woman. So I went to Switzerland, after my parents, goodbye, and I got married alone in Switzerland. I go to the mayor's office, married civil wedding, and the secretary asked me, where do you come from? I say, Jerusalem. But he needs to state the state, and Palestine does not exist on the map, at least, or officially. So you have to write Jerusalem, Israel, because that's how it goes. And she says, oh, I love Israel. I love the Jews. I said, great. I love the Jews too, but please don't write I'm Jewish, on my marriage certificate, So no, she doesn't get it. No, I love the Jews. I said, listen, I understand you. I'm fine with this. Just please don't write I'm Jewish, because I'm not. I'm not religious, but you need to write I'm Christian for the love of God, She said, no. I want to give you a special gift for your wedding. I said, oh my God. So we get married. The mayor says, I pronounce you now man and wife. But for Steve, I have a special gift. And this is what happened. So I became the first Palestinian in the whole world, maybe, who married on the songs of Hava Nagila. I didn't say anything, I just listened. So, a few years later, my wife gets pregnant from me. Because the first time she said, I'm pregnant, I asked her, is it mine? I said, no, from me. And she wanted, because she's Swiss, she's very organized. I said, I would like to go for a course, for labor. I said, fine. So we just landed on an Israeli woman. I told you, I live in old Jerusalem. I don't care we're east and west. And so we go to the house, and there are many ultra-Orthodox Jews in the couples, there. So, but this time, I don't shy from identity. I sat down and said, where do you come from? I said, I come from Palestine. Everyone was so impressed. Why? Because they thought I'm a Jew who is ideological about state of Israel, Palestine, who's like, wow, what a proud Jew. He comes from Palestine, the Jewish land, And then the woman said, yeah, also my father comes from Palestine. They all suddenly come from Palestine, So we became friends with the couple, and they invited us once to, he was from Canada, she was from Holland. They invited us for dinner on a Friday night. We were talking about 2004 and 3, something like that, where there's still the second intifada was very high, suicide bombing, explosions, stuff like that. But I was happy about the invitation. I was never invited to a Jewish dinner in my life. I said, it's about time. How can I live in a city that has all these religions, and I don't know what a Jewish dinner is. So I buy kosher wine, and we go to the house. So the man, it's Jews, pray, and he brings me the kippah. I said, okay. I had this funny face, and he noticed it. And he prays, and the Jews pray a long time, it seems, 10 minutes. And then he finished the prayer. He said, Steve, can I ask you something? I said, yes. He said, why did you refuse to wear the hat? I said, what do you mean, what did you refuse? It's like, I'm not Jewish. He said, what do you mean you're not Jewish? I said, I told you, I come from Palestine. He said, we thought about it. We were 100% sure you were Jewish, and we thought your wife is Goy, not Jew. I said, now imagine what happens. A Palestinian in the middle of the Intifada, having dinner with him, with his family and friends. I mean, what a night it was. And then just about when we leave, I said, Steve, I need to tell you something. I said, what? He said, my father was a Christian. And then I looked at him. I knew there was something good about you. So, see, I usually believe it's easier to say I come from rather than I am. Because when you say I am Palestinian or I'm Israeli, I'm American, you have to believe in what that really means, the burden of representation. But it's easier to say I come from Palestine, from Jerusalem, or even more, I come from the neighborhood I grew up in. But what a disgrace. Look where I come from. It's in English, Bab Hotta. In Arabic, Bab Hotta. I come from Bab Hotta Street. I mean, for the love of God, look at my hair, How can I come from that neighborhood? But one day, I was going down my neighborhood, and the sign was always there, And I read, once I started reading Hebrew, it says in Hebrew, Antonia Street. I said, what? I live in Antonia Street? I mean, you know what I mean? So I rushed to the Ministry of Interior at 4 in the morning, because you have to queue 16 hours to go enter inside. So once my turn, I have my turn. She says, how can I help you? She said, I told her I want to change my address. I said, give me the contract. I said, I didn't move. I said, why are you wasting my time? I said, can you check in your system that Bab Hotta translates into Antonia Street? She said, that's impossible. I said, no, it is possible. She checks with her director and said, you know what? You're not breaking the law. And now you live in Antonia Street. So now I have the perfect ID card. My name, Steve Sabella. My father, Emile. Esperance, my mother, and I live on Antonia Street. What a perfect world. But something happens a few years after. At 1:20 p.m., a colleague of mine and myself get kidnapped by 7 masked Palestinians. And they pushed me in the car. You know, I had my camera equipment. I cared about the camera. I said, can I take my camera? It's like, I'm being kidnapped, but I want my camera. So they pushed me in the car, and they asked immediately for 3 things: my favorite ring, my wallet, and my phone. And then I was speaking Arabic to them. And suddenly, I said, I am Palestinian. I didn't say I come from Palestine. What? You wouldn't understand my philosophy now. I come from Palestine. I said, I am Palestinian. And he said, wow, you speak good Arabic for a foreigner. I said, maybe because I am Palestinian. He just doesn't get it, again. So he said, let me look at your ID card. He sees Steve, oh, this is not Palestinian, and he's Palestinian, by the way. Sabella, I've never heard of it. You know, Emile, I don't know what that means. Esperance, what is that? He said, let me check where he lives. And this when I shouted at him, wait a second, I live in Bab Hotta Street and not Antonia Street. It's amazing how I changed, the philosophy completely changed to the street again. So the story got published in Haaretz. And I don't know if because it got published, the municipality went to the neighborhood, changed Bab Hotta. In English, it's Bab Hotta, in Arabic, Bab Hotta, and in Hebrew, now it's also Bab Hotta. They changed, unified it, and my neighborhood, where I actually grew up, is now called Zabadi Court. So I was right. You know, I never belonged to Bab Hotta. But having said that, I'm so proud today of coming from Bab Hotta. See, I am in a process of self-construction. Hermits go to the desert not to find identity, but to lose it. I decided to lose my identity and only to become a stranger to myself. In 2005, this happened. Kamal Boulata, a famous Palestinian artist, once wrote, Steve Sabella lives like an artist in exile. How can I be in exile in my own city of birth? It doesn't make any sense. But I was out of place all the time. Always felt like I don't belong. So I discovered why. I was not in exile. It was the city itself. Jerusalem has been in exile. Hence, everyone living in that city of exile is in exile. Idea was revealing, but it destroyed me. I completely now, consciously know I'm no more living in my own city. So what is that place I'm living in? Is it Jerusalem? So I launched a major project called Jerusalem in Exile, where I asked Palestinians from all over the world to send me the mental image they have in their brain and imagination about the city. And then I discovered something. This mental image does not reflect the truth, the reality on the ground. It's a mental image based on imagination, on a photograph, on a movie, or something else. And here came the revelation. Jerusalem has been transformed into an image. And now I'm living in the image of my own city. And then I also thought about it. Does this mean that Israelis and Palestinians are fighting, killing each other for an image? Something to think about. But I took it too personal. And when you take it too personal, where do you go? To Ireland. I needed to show the world what it means to live in my exilic landscape. The harsh land I'm walking on. It was a frightful stage. Scars. I felt physically dislocated. But in London, also 2 years later, I wanted to show the whole world what it means to be in exile. I entered my psyche, my core, deep inside, to dangerous levels, just to give a real form to that state of mind. I photographed my immediate surroundings, deconstructed them to rebuild them again. But That's my living room window. The work speaks of alienation. It's the state of mind of permanent exile. Fragmentation. It's like a headache. You know, you wake up in the morning and you just can't continue the day. I was very depressed that year. Disorientation, no center point, no origin. I'm scattered all over. Phobia. Suffocation. But I also needed to do something else in London. Settlement. 6 Israelis, 1 Palestinian. You see, and now I assume the burden of representation. I become the 1 Palestinian. So what I do, I photograph 6 Jewish Israelis in underwear, where context becomes content. How did the Palestinian manage to convince 6 Israelis to strip that they even look like in a Holocaust situation? I wanted to speak about the core issues. The war in Gaza, for example. They said, now we're speaking about the core issues and the peace negotiations. What are you talking about? They're talking about the rockets from Gaza to Israel or the closure of checkpoints. Is this really why we're fighting? Why Israel and Palestine are not having a peace agreement? So let's go back to the essence. Let's speak about the Holocaust. Let's speak about the occupation, which is a word we can't find anymore in the news. I wanted the work that's nostalgia-free, free of any sentiment. I scrapped the nostalgia from the work to speak about the essence. Israelis. Israel is a very strong state, yet it lives in fear. There is some sense of paranoia, which is I can't explain. Why would Israel fear the 1 Palestinian who's actually managing to pose a threat on the 6 Israelis? It doesn't make any sense. We also, Palestinians, refer to the Israelis as the Jews in their collective form, instead of seeing them as 1 by 1. Yet, Israelis always look at the 1 Palestinian who's going to terrorize everything, is going to explode. They don't see us also as a collective. The Lacanian mirror of recognition. We must recognize one another to reach a peace agreement. There's no clear winner. And this categorizes the recent wars. Who's winning this war? And we entered a war of the image. Israelis and Palestinians. We want to show the world who is more a victim. I am anti the idea of victimhood. Settlement. Are we settling accounts? Are we reaching a resolution? Or who's settling on the ground? Also, the idea of being balanced. You have to take sides, either this side or that side. You can't always say we have to be balanced about it. But something happened after that. I started to feel in transition. And where do you feel in transition these days? In Dubai. There, I meet a woman with glittery eyes. And she said, what are you working on now? I said, nothing. She said, why? I said, listen, after In Exile, the work before, I managed to glue my fragments, and I feel more stable. Hence, I'm less depressed. And if I'm not depressed, I don't do art. I said, I don't understand you. I said, why? He said, if you are happier now, why don't you give a visual form to the beautiful side of your brain? I was on fire, you know? It's like, what? It never occurred to me that I can create art out of beauty. So I go to London, I take the camera, I was shaking in the streets in London. I photographed trees like a lunatic. And this is what happened. I dislocated again myself, but this time something good is happening. The tree is shifting from this side to that side. Change is coming, and big time. I was on fire, and I was on euphoria. And this one, I created this work. Instead of using windows like you saw before, I photographed trees. Trees are organic. They grow, they move, they shift. I'm uprooting myself and spreading roots all over the world, becoming a global citizen. It was like dancing in the air. The core is ignited. It's a spark. But to do that, I needed to break my bones, to become more malleable to change, physically break my bones. And then, to honor that woman, which I refer to as a muse now, I mirrored her eyes, the glitter of the shine I saw in her eyes. But there was something even beyond euphoria. It shocked me. Beyond euphoria was created at the time when the Arab revolutions started happening. It was just before I was working on it. And I don't know if you know the man on the TV on Jazeera who went shouting on the street about Ben Ali when he ran away. Ben Ali Harab. I don't know, are you aware of that man? That man had a voice out of this world. He echoed 100 years of Arabic misery. And everyone fell in love with him. He became an icon. He was just in my blood. You know, I would listen to him every day, endless times. I go to Paris, and then I go to a collector of mine, and he says, Steve, how are you? I said, listen, I won't lie to you. When I die, I will remember two voices. It's the man who shouted Ben Ali Harab, and the guy who said, Harimna, Harimna. And he said, I have news for you. I said, what? I just invited the Ben Ali Harab guy. What were the chances? I mean, the guy from Tunisia in Paris, and suddenly I'm having dinner with this character that really inspired me. The work completely changed. I created a new work with Beyond Euphoria based on that night. It's limitless. The options are limitless in this work. Where also starts to advocate that our meaning, our understanding of the world is in the image itself, rather than outside of it. The cut fragments assume their meaning from their adjacent fragments. See? Ecstasy. But after that, I realized I cannot live this permanent state of exile, nor the euphoria. It's impossible, because both are states that you cannot manage. So the cure is metamorphosis. That's a project I will work on till I die. Metamorphosis takes my previous experiences, like barbed wire, which I grew up with, and I'm stitching my wounds with barbed wire. If I manage to stitch my wounds with barbed wire, I'll be stronger. Hence, I'm doing this right now, to reach this state, which is a combination between exile and euphoria. Finally, the Egyptians at Tahrir Square were fighting for the liberation of their image. That was the real triumph. They managed to defy the system and force the world to look at them with different eyes. Their challenge now is to assert control of their image, especially because the system is fighting back forcibly to paralyze that victory and reconquer that image. The human struggle today is to conquer its image. Nothing less, nothing more. Our image not only needs visual liberation, but an enormous amount of visual correction. An enormous amount of visual correction. That's what our image needs today. Thank you very much.